Hello again, everybody. This is James Bartley, and you're listening to the Cosmic Switchboard Show. In the first hour, our very special guest, Naome Swan, was talking about the hero and how the hero programming prevents many people from fully healing, fully reintegrating, because they're spending too much time helping others, spending too much time denying themselves, and it's almost a form of self-betrayal, this hero kind of programming, which is reinforced constantly in cinema. And so here in the second hour, Naome will go into more details about that. And Naome, what I'd like you to start off talking about is how we sometimes unconsciously set up a stage to clear our conscience. Could you elaborate on what you mean by that?
I think that we can do it both. I think we can set it up unconsciously or consciously, because our evolution always wants to clean the mind and clean up the unconscious energy. So I think it's important for all of us to understand that we have the ability and the power to set up the stage ourselves, and to ask the universe that I want to set up the stage. I want to clear out, I want to clear out the unconsciousness as much as I can, but I want a safe environment that I can do that in, and to create that safe environment, because the safer environment, the more accumulated energy we can release. And so to me, understanding that and setting up kind of the dynamic, whatever that looks like, mine just ended up this way. They're all going to be different because we're all creative beings, and it's just setting it up so that we can, get rid of that and dissolve that accumulated energy in our energy systems and be really the essence of who we are.
Now, the people that are going through the hero-heroine syndrome, what are some of the things one needs to see about themselves? What are the kind of subconscious cues they kind of need to tune into to realize that I'm going through this, that I'm manifesting all the outward trappings of the hero?
Well, like we talked in the first hour, I think it's about every time we're triggered or every time something doesn't feel, on in our system, and we know that because, it's a little tricky, I think, for some people, especially, it took me a lot of years to figure this out, but I think when something, they call it the gut, when you feel the gut feeling, something does not feel right in the system, is when we go in and we look it out, and then to always make it about ourselves and not about the other person. However, I think where people get confused is they get mixed up with observation and judgment, and becoming a master of observation. So when I'm talking about different people, what I can see is when I'm with different sub-personalities, there are some people in my coaching or my friendships or in my intimate relationships that I know some people, they have a boundary, they stop, and they don't want to do any more work. So I know from my art of discernment that's where it's at. I stop unless now they ask. And so that's kind of my boundary. When somebody's going through some stuff and they're not asking me is when, I put up that boundary. That's observation. But judgment is, that old jealous paradigm, and that's stepping on somebody to make us look bigger, that superior energy, that sense of entitlement. It's kind of that energy, and just to kind of understand those different dynamics that, are we going into that? Are we going into that old energy? And to really understand, is that the old energy? Because remember, we're switching our new solar panel on, and we're doing the new game. We're going to do new game and dissolve the accumulated energy so that we become who we are. But by doing that, we have to really understand what belief systems are driving us, what mechanisms are in the mind, what's playing behind the curtain, so that we can get our power back from those mechanisms. And before we go on, James, I think there's a really important factor that I wanted to bring out, too, about this victim, hero, predator program. And part of it is because I see this a lot going on, and I know all of us are getting information from the same source, and it can be very, very interesting. But I noticed that in our inner circle, if we could all do this with each other, because I think this is, again, up-leveling ourselves to the next step of integrity, is, when someone's helped you out and you had an energy shift, to really honor and respect them. And I think the best way we can honor and respect them is just like what you did today on the radio show with me. You said, Naome has really helped me out. She's given me some huge energy shifts. to me, that is like more than money. That is energy in my system. And then what happens to you is that energy comes back to you. What happens a lot, and it's a mind control program, what happens a lot is you'll give somebody a tool, you'll teach them, they'll have an energy shift. Then what they'll do is they'll come back the next week and tell you the same thing what you just told them a week ago. And then you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm the one that told you that. So there's this missing link there. There's a disconnect. There's a missing link. There isn't honor and there isn't respect. On some level, there's a pocket of parasites going on. Now, on the highest level, because, we have to look at all these at different dimensions in different ways. On the highest level, it's okay because we can see as me being a friend or coach or teacher, whatever I am, playing that role at that particular time, they got it. They got what I was telling them. So, again, that's also beneficial too. But to go that next step, to honor and respect that person, is the next step. And it just creates this beautiful dynamic synergy. I think that that's where we really need to go in to honor that, because really what we're doing is we're honoring our own essence by seeing ourselves, and then they're just a reflection of us.
Yes, and what I found is that when we do honor people in the way you describe, I have no problems edifying someone who has been of seminal influence upon me, someone who has helped me tremendously, as you have. You have this knack, just in a very quick, brief Facebook message, you can ask me if everything is okay at my end and if I'm going through anything, and often as not, you're absolutely right. And there's only so much one can say in a little chat box to say, well, this is going on, et cetera, et cetera. But with your ability to tune into energy fields and your ability to intuit what's going on with others and then properly assimilate that information so you have an idea. This is why people really do need to get a reading and get a consult session from Naome if they're going through certain kinds of challenges, because she has a knack for getting down to the nitty-gritty. And so, like, in a very few brief words, she can ask me, well, is something going on in this, that, or the other part of your life? And often as not, she's absolutely correct. And it removes this, perhaps, reluctance on my part to want to talk about it. Well, she zeroed right in on me, so I might as well tell her what's going on, you know what I mean? And so it's a burden, it relieves a burden, and it also is empowering at the same time. And so this is why people always hear me edify Dr. Carla Turner and edify Barbara Bartholick. I mean, these are people that passed away, but their influence is still profound. Their legacy is still profound. And I wouldn't be the person I am were it not for their seminal influence. So I have no qualms about honoring and edifying those people who, by word and deed, are people of integrity and people who work from a heart-centered space. That comes very easy. It's very natural for me.
Yeah, I can see that with you, and I think that's who you are as a person, and I've always respected that with you. However, I just know that there's just different, I think that's kind of the parasitic ego, the external ego again. And it's, again, just really when we can do that, what that shows is really ultra integrity. That shows, that we see the person, we honor the person, we respect the person. And so that, to me, is like really rich. That is the richness that we can all create together in the unified field of harmony. And that, as we do that and we do more and more of that, well, then it's just going to take these lower vibrations out. And, that's how I'm always looking. How can we take these lower vibrations out so that we are not in the pain and suffering anymore that they continually put upon us? So, unknowingly, put upon us unknowingly. Let me put that on there, because a lot of times we don't know what they're doing until hindsight. Anyways, let's get back to what we were talking about as far as the decoding from the system. And so what I look at when I look at the energy systems of people is I do see a system anymore. It's not, I do see an energetic hologram system, and it's very, very fascinating when I see it. It's very, very fascinating when I see it. It's kind of like looking in different mazes, different ways how how they operate. And how the different ways we can do that is there's a list that I bought up that I'm going to kind of read off of, so that as we can read this and look at this, we can look at these and go, oh, I have that in my system, and I see that I have that. Or, oh, I know somebody that has done that to me, but the only way anybody can do that to me is because I have it in myself. Now, I may not participate on it 100% like they do, but I do participate a little bit and then own that piece. The more that we do that, the more free we become. And so that's really how the operating system works. So in the hero, in the codependent dysfunctional heroism, is that the first mindset is that they're worried about everyone else besides themselves. So
Yeah.
I used that example in the party. I was worried about Judy, all that. She became before me, and then I was hit the next day because my essence is saying, no, you need to worry about yourself first, and then everything else will fall into place. And it does. It's very funny how that does. And there's a difference, and I think people get confused with being concerned about yourself and being an ego. Being concerned about yourself is your well-being, your safety, setting boundaries. That's honoring, valuing, and loving yourself. The ego is, I'm just going to do something to, really vampiric or feed off of somebody, but unknowingly do that. So the ego is, I am going to be superior, or I am going to put that person down. That's not the I that we're talking about. That's the small I. That's the small me. And I think that when, the Bible or people say I am, I think this is where this programming has got so confused and so convoluted that it's got really, really misrepresented. And so to understand that, the bottom line, and it's so easy to treat people how you want to be treated. And when we can go from that mindset and we can go from that heart center, then that's another way that everything is going to fall into place. We'll know when we're out of balance when we come from that internal set. That's like the organic station within our body. The other thing that the hero does is they have difficulty identifying their feelings. They don't even know their feelings. They don't know what's driving them. They have no clue. They jump out of their body and they project before they can't even figure out what's going on. They don't even want to look at themselves, and that's another hero dynamic, because when we're in that hero dynamic, what we're doing is instead of working on ourselves and looking at ourselves, we're trying to fix everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big one. That was a big one for me. I did that a lot of years in my younger days, in my 20s, 30s. In fact, I had a boss that was very, very reptilian, and I was the hero in the whole office, and I got really, 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 really sick trying to be in the hero. And I was denying my feelings. I didn't know about my feelings, and I was taking care of everybody else in an abusive relationship, really. About looking at that and owning that, instead of me saying, this is when I was in my 20s, instead of me saying I'm really afraid and I'm scared, and Rick has MS and I have a child and I'm scared and I don't know what to do, and I didn't own my feelings. Instead, I jumped out of my body and I was trying to fix everybody else so I could have a job, and so that was just a really sick pattern. When we look at that stuff, what we do, right? And then if you have any examples, James, go ahead and jump in with any examples as I go through this, because I think the more examples we have, the more examples that people can see. At least that's what I see. People learn by our stories. As long as we don't wear the stories. we use the stories to teach, but we don't wear them anymore, right? But while seeing themselves as an unselfish and dedicated their well-being to others. So that's another mind hijack. So, oh, I'm not unselfish, in observation, this may have been that gal at the party, she was unselfish, she paid for the party, she did everything she could for my friend, it was a very, 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 very sweet gesture. I mean, very nice. It was a nice party, it was good food, everything like that. But underneath it, there was something else going on. And so there was this mechanism going on, a feeding mechanism. And behind it was but I had to pay for the food, and I had to pay for everything, and it was that resentment. It was that passive-aggressive, instrument going on. What creates a blind spot is lacking empathy for the needs of others. So again, when let's just use that example again at this gal, when she didn't have the empathy to hear the person out when she'd asked the question, she was lacking empathy. There wasn't, what about the other person? So what I do for myself is I'm trying to break the habit of the small me and the small I. So when I start on, if I'm needing something and I'm waiting for you, or I'm waiting for somebody to get back to me, what I notice is I have this hero that wants to jump out, I got my needs met, and think and get my needs done. So what I'm doing is I'm setting back into my heart, and I'm waiting a few seconds. And I'm just waiting, and I'm going, I wonder how James is doing. And I check in, and I pause, and I just say, hey, how are you? So that it's not starting with the me, my opportunistic, or whatever wants to run me, right? I'm being very, very, very aware. And then I'm bringing the big I up, wondering how my friend is doing, wondering what's going on in their world. And then I go into, oh, yeah, by the way, thank you for meeting my needs. I got the information. I appreciate it, whatever that looks like. So it's about stopping at me, honoring the other person, and then going back into what I was needing them for, or thanking them, or whatever, so that we are, again, changing the game, because so many of us want to jump out into the small me and get our needs met that we forget about the other person. And so that's changing from the me to the we. So, again, we're changing the game. So once the hero's manipulation doesn't work anymore, what happens is they go into the victim consciousness. What will happen is, like, I can use my example again at this job. I was the hero. I took the boss to, we had a mediation. They didn't fire her, of course. This was 25 years ago, and they didn't fire her because she made so much money. And they weren't going to fire her, but they told me I could still work even though she was abusive, and it was proven. And she did get fired 7 years later because 7 other managers, such as myself, did the same thing until they just decided that, we were all whistleblowers and that people were going to get held on to it. And this is an insurance company, by the way, just so you know, really what goes behind the scenes of this. But I was the hero, playing the hero in the office. But as soon as I was the one that was let go, even though I did get 6 months severance because they knew they had to give me something, I didn't take that as a gift. I kind of went into the victim, like I was the excluded one. I was the one that didn't have the job, blah, blah, blah. I played that role for a little bit until I snapped out of it, and it took me a little bit to snap out of it. So, we got to see what we're doing here. I shouldn't have played that mechanism to begin with. I didn't have to be anybody's hero. I should have just quit and set boundaries, but I didn't know how to do that. I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the understanding. I didn't have the sustainability. I was very, very insecure and low confidence. So there's that dynamic too, to understand how these viruses will go from one identity to another, and that they're all playing out at the same time. And they're all playing out at the same time on different timelines. So not are we only giving energy to them in this timeline, we're giving them energy in the other timelines, accumulating more energy to only run havoc in our systems. So when we can understand the dimensions and how this all operates, we start to see why important this work is, how important this work is.
I can add something to that, too, because when I was in that people-pleasing mode, and you mentioned earlier about how you spent all this time and money on the phone. This is back in, before the unlimited calling days, so my phone bills really kind of stacked up, and you have to allocate a certain amount of money every day, every month for groceries, for rent, for phone bills, right? And I got into this mode where I was pulled into all these intrigues that were going on with people that were archontically being manipulated, and I myself was being archontically manipulated because I was in the unconscious role of hero. That person I mentioned, I described her, I used the pseudonym of Sheila, where she was a abductee support group facilitator, and she'd enmeshed herself. There's that term again, enmeshment. into so many people's lives, and I got pulled into all that. When my name was dragged through the mud, and I went from being a hero to a victim, I wallowed in the victim mentality for a while. It was like, I'm trying to do the good thing. I'm trying to do the right thing.
Right.
I'm trying to help people, and then this happens to me, and all this mudslinging is going on. Somehow everything has been inverted, and and I didn't realize just how spiteful and just how much of a rumor mill there is in our field. Soon I realized, because of the incessant rumor mongering and mudslinging going on, that I was being painted as some kind of a pariah. And so I went from being a hero, a goody two-shoes hero, to being a victim. And I had to ask myself, how did I get into this? All I was trying to do was help people that were going through all these problems, and suddenly everything has been stood on its head. I'm made to look like the bad guy in all this. But what I didn't realize at the time was I was playing to a program, basically.
Absolutely. That's exactly it, man. When you can see it's a program, it's so much easier not to take it personal. You can see it for what it is, so that's really, really good feedback there. And I think that it's fascinating how it will just, you can feel the energy, the negative energy just come at you, and you don't even know it's hitting you. It's just like, whoa, what just hit me? I thought I was doing the right thing. And the sad part is again, when I talked earlier in the first hour, there's that beautiful heart energy, because I know that's really what we all want. We want this organic. We want to nourish people. We want to have this love back in the boundless love and without the integrity, because we don't need it. We want to be there. But, all these different codes and viruses running us, we go through these experiences so that we can figure them out and become that much smarter and help support people so they don't have to go through them like we do, or if they do, then we're all releasing the energy together. And I love that, because as you're talking, I'm releasing, and vice versa. So that's really good that, again, we do that together. So the other one is judge or label others with negative traits, and that one hurts. That one hurts, and that's a fine line. It can be a fine line when we do this in observation, and I think that sometimes what I've had to do for myself in this mind control, and because as I deepen what's going on in my field, is people are going off on me like atom bombs, and I'm just like, wow, this is fascinating. So I put people in buckets now. So I have a mechanism of what person goes in what bucket, and it's just for my own safeguard. There's no judgment, there's no label, but it's just for me to understand, okay, I can say this to this person, I can do to this person, and I can say to this person, and I can stay in my sovereignty, I can stay centered, and it's going to be okay. And then I can feel in my energy system if it's going in and out of that bucket. And there's been times where I put the person in the wrong bucket, and then they've exploded on me. But that's an observation, and I just want people to really understand that as we maneuver through this, we kind of have to know what stepping stones we're stepping on, if you know what I mean. Now, to judge someone is, kind of what happened with you, and I'm sorry that you went through that. I'm very, very sorry that people have to put another person down, or make up stories, or gossip, or do these things that are really untrue, that to make themselves look bigger and brighter. And I had a call from a friend the other day, and she told me that somebody had said something about me. I don't even know the woman, and I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. But, that's okay. That's just where she's coming from. I still hold her in love and space, but it's just fascinating to hear some of the labels going on out there. But the weird part about it, I wasn't hurt, because I knew it wasn't my stuff. So I think that we start hitting that vibration too when it's not even us. We know it's them. But to really be conscious of when I judge or when I label, what's really going on? Where am I hurting at? What control mechanism is going on? Because usually when I judge somebody, I'm in fear. What fear is going on? Where am I feeling unsafe? Where am I feeling not seen? And so we start really playing around with that energy. And when we start investigating like that, then the energy starts to open, and the universe always shows us where this shows up. And so that we can have an understanding, again, when we're asking, guess what? We're creating the setup. When we're creating the setup, guess what? The trigger is not as heavy as it could be. And so that's the other thing, just to remember that we have the power. And we have the power, the dark ones don't.
I just wanted to make a point very briefly that sometimes we get caught up in the labeling game, even unconsciously, where someone will contact us, people in our field, and then maybe it's just the way the wording on the subject line is. Maybe it's just the first couple of sentences in the first paragraph, and keeping in mind that there are like a number of other emails that you have to open and respond to. Sometimes, and I'm sure at some level there is some archontic manipulation going on, because we sometimes fall into this pattern of labeling people, and some people are better at or not so good at this compared to others in a negative sense, where they're constantly, in order to make sense of their world, they label things. They label people. They label situations. We see this all the time. So I get an email, and I'm thinking, just by the subject line, just by the way something is written, I kind of put that person on a back burner for a little while, because maybe there's something in the way it's worded, or maybe there's something with the energy about the email that has kind of put me on guard. And this is all these unresolved issues that I'm still working through, that I'm still fighting through, that I'm still working to heal. And ironically, when I finally get around to responding to that person, right, it turns into an interaction with a very well-integrated, really with it kind of person, where I may have had this a priori bias towards them, even, where I'm thinking, oh, this person is going to be a problem, this person is going to be a hassle, this person's incoherent and scattered. But it turns out that maybe when they wrote that subject line, maybe they're not a professional writer, okay? And so the way they worded something was enough to put me off my guard, and then because of whatever unresolved issues, whatever archontic malign influence I was under at the time, maybe the archons didn't want me to talk to this person. Maybe this person was reaching out to me for a reason, and they had to fight through a lot of barriers, fight through a lot of blockages, and try to reach out to me in a mutually beneficial way, not in the parasitical way. And here I am. I'm supposed to be the person giving the consults, and I'm supposed to be the person that's got it together, and I've still got these issues to work through. So I can say that the whole labeling thing is very insidious. It's very it works on an unconscious, even a hyperdimensional level.
I think so too, and I think it's about. I think again, it's about up leveling and seeing it, because even it's so hard, and I watch myself do it all the time. And when I'm seeing something on Facebook, and it's a predator type energy, and there's I can feel a lot of energy in my system, and I just want to be angry and type. And what I realize is I'm only adding to the negative energy. But when I can pause back, and put something in a higher dimension, what happens on a comment, like saying something like, I see this planet cleaning themselves up, or I see this planet going out in clarity, whatever. Even if I don't write that, but I say it to myself, what I'm doing is I'm using the polarity and bring it to zero field. And so,
Yes.
and so when we can do that too, when we can use the dark archonic forces on Facebook or whatever, instead of jumping on the bandwagon and being parasitic with what's going on, using it to build our energy muscle, feel it, what it feels like in the system. When we feel how terrible it feels, how unsafe it feels, how the injustice feels, and then we put it on the other side, and take it to where how freedom feels, and then we bring it to 0 point field. Then what happens is, again, we're being the energetic consumers of what we want in this world.
Yes, and I've been there. I've been one of those, I guess, purveyors of doom and gloom and negativity, because of the very nature of Facebook. The OCD uh, promoting nature of Facebook. Click like, click share, click like,
Right.
click share. Now, I may have a philosophical agreement with a certain topic or a certain post, and a lot of my longtime Facebook friends already know from past experience that I feel strongly about certain subjects. Certainly, the people who monitor Facebook and all the algorithmic
Right.
patterns that are laid out. So there are times when I've had to step back and not fall for the default pattern of like, share, like, share, like, share, because like you said, it adds to the feeling of doom and gloom and negativity. And at times I've made a conscious effort to put music out and put comedy out, and even in somewhat negative subjects, I try to find some humor, tinged with truth and reality, but try to bring some kind of light or humor into what's normally a very heavy subject. So I have to watch myself constantly because my mindset, my particular programming, or one of them, happens to be of a historical research mindset where I'm just constantly looking for patterns and looking for things to research and things to kind of make sense of things, right? And so part of that process of unplugging and detaching is not to buy into all that and just to recognize it. Okay, I agree with this post. I'm going to let it wash over me like water off a duck's back. I'm not going to let it inflame me like certain forms of information would in the past, where I have this righteous streak of indignation within me, and it at times is easy to flare up, right? So I've had to learn how to step back and let it wash over me, and then change it and bring it to that higher level you were talking about.
Right, and I think too, if I could add one more thing to that, because I think this is where the New Age bullshit comes in, and I think that we're breaking this down a little bit. It's sometimes it can't wash over. I mean, sometimes it's just ugly. It's sickening to look at. It's there. I mean, when you see some of this stuff, what they do to the animals, what they do to children,
Oh yeah.
and what I will do, I will sit there and I will look at this. I will watch the video and I will feel my body. I will go into my heart space and I will be aware and I will focus. Because what I'm doing is I'm actually clearing out the accumulated energy, being sustained, because I'm using it to build my energy muscle. If I can watch this and practice this way, then when I'm in chaos, I've got a pretty strong sustainability.
Yes.
And right now what I'm doing is I'm using it as a practice standpoint of not only practicing for myself to build my energy muscle, but I'm also clearing the energy fields. So, I know some of my past story that a lot of people don't know, but I have a son that was killed, and he helps me on the other side. And, part of what he has me do is, and I didn't know this, I mean, he told me he was my only child. He told me that I would be the mother to all children. And it would be the mother to all children. I didn't know what he meant. And then he had me, sit outside castles where satanic rituals were going on. I had no clue that what really a satanic ritual was, but he told me it was a satanic ritual. I didn't even know what it was. I said, okay, I'll sit outside, and then I did some investigation. And I just said, this is some pretty heavy energy, because then I started feeling the children. And I'm probably going to get a little teary-eyed because the children would pop out and say, they see us. We're going to get help. We're going to get help. So I could see how strong the intelligence is. And the intelligence is just the heart. It's just my heart. And I'm just the instrument, again, for the intelligence. When we understand that we have the strength and the mechanism and the sustainability to do this, this is how we're going to free ourselves. So, again, some people will say, oh, I can't go into satanic ritual. That is dark energy. I will not go there. I'm not going to put my energy field in there. Well, you know what? You're part of it. If you're resisting it, you're part of it. The bottom line,
Yes.
So, that's a label again. See how the New Age works? It's a label. So
Yes.
It's about going head on into the energy, feeling it. If it does wash over you, great. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes there's a tsunami in my system, and I've got to go through the tsunami. And that's what I'm saying with the energy. We've got to go through it. We can't jump it anymore. We've got to go through it. But the more we feel it, the more sustained we get. So that's a big one on that label, because I think a lot of people get caught on that one. And I know that I have too. I'm right along with you. I've done that too. I mean, sometimes I'll hit anger still on that button because I'm like, oh, I don't know what to say. I'm angry, and I'm not being totally, in integrity with my system, right? So, I just watch myself at those buttons now. That's just put more awareness in our field, basically.
And some days I'm better at it. Some days I can withstand the rigors of such dense energy and dense information, and I can plow through it. Other times it's almost a form of emotional unplugging, emotional detachment, where I can watch something or listen to something, and when I start to feel that indignation rise within me, I will own it for a moment. I'll let
right.
it course through me, and I'll feel it, and then I'll let the moment pass.
Yes.
So it depends on where I'm at any one given moment and what's been going on in my life. But that's a very good point you make about the New Age, because one thing about the New Agers, they're so into shaming, they're so into labeling others. Like, for example, in the field of alien abductions, and many of my listeners, our listeners, know that I'm in this field, there is that element within the contactee community and the New Age community where if you mention anything of a negative nature, i.e. negative alien abductions, you're a fearmonger, you're all into the negative, you brought these negative experiences upon you,
Right.
etc., etc. It's all about shaming, it's all about labeling, and it's all about making themselves feel better at the expense of others. And I see that a lot. And what I've had to do over time is I had to detach from people like that. In fact, truth be known, the reason why I got into this field in the first place was because I was reading so many of these New Age blogs and these comments that were all over the Internet talking about how wonderful the Space Brothers are and there are no such things as negative aliens, that finally, deflation set in, and I just had enough, and I started writing, and I started putting out my own articles. That's really where it started. And then when I saw Dr. Carla Turner, she gave me permission. It's okay to know that these negative things go on with these negative entities, messing with perfectly innocent people. It's okay to recognize that and to work through it. She gave me permission to move on.
Right. So when you're talking about it, so they're stepping into the ego hero.
Yes.
And the reason why is because, coming from a place of compassion and understanding where they're stepping from it, because I've had a lot of this in my life too, is they're coming from a place of fear.
Absolutely.
Of fear, because they don't want to look at it because they're too afraid to look at it. And I understand that too. But there's also got to be a time, this is when I talk about in my blogs, that we have to use courage and we have to use our energy muscle. So if we're just on, the carpet ride and just pretending like we're the genie in the bottle, we're not going to get very built up. And then what happens when chaos does happen? We're very weak. We're a weak link, and we don't want that. We don't want to be a weak link. With Rick, after we separated, he says, I'm going to do my own thing. And I says, all right. And he went the New Age route. I said, you go ahead and do that route. I ain't going that route, but you can do that route. I can't go there. And so, 4 years later, we kind of meet up again. Not that we're living in the same house, but we're kind of exchanging more deeply than we have in a long time, because he kind of did his own thing when I was with Jason. And he could see where he had been hoodwinked. He's just like, oh, my gosh, you guys are so much stronger than I am. You guys are so much, he could see where he was hoodwinked over and over and over again, because he would just switch his thought. I'm just going to be happy today. I'm going to fake it till I make it, and I'm just going to go on that carpet ride instead of using his energy muscle. And then when he started seeing and feeling my muscle, he's like, wait a minute, I've done something goofy here. And then he owned it, and now he's back on track again. So, we've just got to be really careful and discerning and know that when our resistance is up, it means we need to go in. So if we got satanic resistance, there's something there for us. And then we use that as an opportunity to get our power back, because we probably were in a past life in satanic ritual, and we're getting our power back. That's what I see a lot.
Yes, because it's so pervasive. There are times when I've been to sacred sites, sacred native sites, energetic ley lines and vortexes, and it's clear from artifacts left behind, from the energy signature left behind, that there were some dark rituals that were conducted in the recent past to kind of sully, to kind of destroy, if you will, the positive energy that had once
Right.
reigned at this particular place.
Right.
And that's very common.
Right. And the truth is, then that's one level. All of us in in the energy as far as in this life, and then other lives, but also, then on the highest level, and then we're going to the oneness, and the oneness is a very beautiful dynamic, and I think that's where a lot of there's some confusion on the oneness too, because the oneness is just the connection. So, like, when you're out in the mountains and all of a sudden see an eagle flying over you, circling you, that's oneness. That eagle can feel your
Oh,
energy,
yes.
and that eagle wants to dance with you. That's all the oneness is this very harmonic, dynamic dance. And we all have that ability together to create that harmony with the positive energy and owning our stuff, which we're talking about. This is why we're doing that, so that we can fly like the eagles again. Because I know we used to at one time. There's no doubt about it.
Yes, because we're getting back to our former quantum multidimensional state.
Right.
And a big part of that is recognizing where all these programs have been installed, and recognizing where all these blocks and shunts are. And you also mentioned in prior to coming on, and some of our discussions prior to the show, the different ways that the heroes kind of manifest their challenges, if you will. For example, they mask their pain in various ways, in anger, humor, isolation. They express negativity or aggression in indirect and passive ways. The irony is they're trying to be a hero or a heroine, but because they haven't worked through these issues, it manifests in these different ways, passive-aggressive ways, a need to find fault in others, for example. And I see that, and it's interesting dynamic when you watch it. We've all come across these people who make themselves out to be a martyr because they're always helping or seeming to help everybody else, but at the same time, those people that they're striving or appearing to want to help, they're constantly finding fault with them. They're demanding perfection in others, but they're not looking within themselves first.
Very good. That's a very, very, very good, James. I think that's a big one. Because when we look at it, so now we can break down the identity. So we got the hero that's attached to the victim, and now you're going into the martyr. And so we can see, or we can go into the martyr, to the victim, and to the predator. So, so we can see how all these dynamics play us, and have that understanding, of the perfect pictures, of being attached to the results. I mean, I had some of that with Jason. I went through some of that myself, that I had this, this dream or this reality, and this that I thought should look like this, and all it did was slam me. So it's about, it's not about having a result. It's about going with the flow, allowing and accepting what is, and if I can stay in this relationship with the addiction energy, then I'll stay in it. If I can't, I can't, and then come to that resolution. Not try to squeeze it out of him or fix him or whatever, which I did on some level. And I am very, very humbled with doing that, but as we go through this, we learn. So we know not to do it the next time, around. I think that's very, very good. The perfect pictures and projecting that on other people is a very, very big one on the hero. And then they also have difficulty making decisions. And the reason why they have difficulty making decisions is because they are not in their body. They are confused. And that's part of the Arconian programming, is they want us confused. Because as long as we're confused, then they got us. I mean, they got us hook, line, and sinker. So, when we can be organically in our system and operating from an essence and being absolute in our absolute energy, then they can't hook in. And sometimes, though, because of Jason and because of the victim-type predator energy we were in, I really got to understand what my mother and father went through, and then I got to understand what some of my girlfriends have gone through, being with a predator husband or partner, and then I got to understand, what a lot of the domestic violence women have gone through or men have gone through, because I know it works both ways. And, it's very, very fascinating that I never really understood that. And God, when I was like, how old was I? 30. One thing I asked, I have it in my journal, and I still have it, and I says, I want to learn compassion. And you know what I think I've done is I've really set up a dynamic where I go in and I get to experience these things so I can find a deeper compassion. Because when we have the deeper compassion, again, is when we're in the organic template and we're healing from that level. And, we don't even have to say anything, and people will be healed at that level. So I think that, that's another thing to understand, that, like you were talking, we're going from A through, through A through L to Z, and as we're going through these different patterns in our life and healing them, in the end, we're just going to, I think what I see is we're just going to heal each other like popcorn. You know what I mean? James has got that piece. I've got this piece. We're all just going to come together and go off and, and maybe go off into one line. I don't know how this is going to look, but I know something's got to, maybe I'm in la la land thinking this, but I know something's got to take, because I know the power of this energy. I've seen it, or I wouldn't be saying that. I know the power of the energy, and the dark force is very, 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 very strong, but the light force is stronger. The 0-point field is stronger. And so when we know that, and what we've been through all these thousands of years, and we put it into 0-point field, what's going to happen? It's kind of exciting to think about it on some level. That's what keeps me sustained in my field, knowing there's really some cool, positive energy that's going to open up for all of us.
And we've seen this manifest a number of times now when we've tried to get these shows going, when you, I, Deborah Jane East would have a three-way panel discussion, and when we were going on Eric's show, we were all calling in that time, we were just met with a wall of alien artificial intelligence, of spiritual warfare resistance, but rather than, and in my case in the past, where I would have been frustrated, deflation would have set in, I would have been effing and blinding and stomping my feet, I kind of stepped back, stayed embodied, I didn't get in my headspace. I go, okay, I'm just going to work on myself here, I'm going to work to sustain a higher field, to use your terminology, and I knew intuitively that you were doing the same, Deborah was doing the same, so collectively we were finally able to patch this all together on the same show and get the information out. And one can always get an idea of the importance of certain types of information by the amount of resistance the information sharers are receiving. Because in this matrix simulation scheme of things, when one truly wants to do good in this world, you're going against the grain of this world. So you can expect at some level to get interference. And for us, because of the nature of the Internet and World Wide Web, they interfere with our comms, our communications, and then they do things to us physically and emotionally and spiritually. Like I know just in the few weeks I've had this show going, the amount of spiritual warfare reprisals I've received. But I've just had to, stay embodied, maintain my space and maintain my integrity, and not take it personal and not get angered by it all. It's easy to get angry, but then we're playing their game. We're giving our power away. So I see it as benchmarks, Naomi, that when we get this kind of interference, it means we're really onto something.
Yeah, I do too. And today, thank you for holding the space for me. That was funny. I'm like, here we go again. And I ended up having to call my internet service to get back up again. But then it worked all day long until we were to get on the line. So it was just fascinating to me. It happened to you on your end on some level we were trying to get on. Then I just was laughing at that point. I'm just like, all we can do is laugh at this point. Yeah,
well, when all else fails, reboot the computer, and that's what I did. And suddenly I started sounding better at your end, and we were able to go ahead with this recording.
Right.
In the few minutes we've got left, Naomi, is there anything you want to share with the listening audience as far as any further ways one can identify the hero programming within us, how we can step back, stay embodied, and say, okay, that's what I've been doing. What kind of little refinements and adjustments can I make in order to get me back on track?
Well, I think, again, we didn't even get to the list, and you're going to have me back on again so we can go through this list.
Absolutely.
Because I think this is valuable information. I think, again, I think the biggest thing that people need to understand is this is where the biggest hijack is, I see with people, is being energetically, and I've got more blogs coming out on this, but being energetically responsibly for people. So, like with Rick, we have a pattern in our marriage where he was a heavy pot smoker, and it caused a lot of problems with us. And one of the problems we had was I didn't want him, smoking pot with our only child. Not that he did it when he was around, but when we were on camping trips, I didn't want to travel with it because, to me, my child is more important than the marijuana. And to get busted with it, and in the state we were living in, we could have gone. Our child could have been taken away from us. So, you have to really put the priorities. And what are the priorities, the addiction or the child? I mean, we got to get honest here, okay? So when we were going through that, and then at one point in time, what would happen is I would just get angry, and I would be in his way, and I was being protective of my son. I was being overprotective because I didn't want anything to happen to us. And I don't know if you can feel that, James, that you can feel the energy. It feels icky, it's suffocating, it's a mishment. And what happens is we become the blind spot for them. So they can't even see what they're doing.
Yes.
We become the curtain. We're because we're so in their space, we're projecting out, and then they can't even see. So, after we lost our son and we went through a lot of turmoil, I was blessed with a shaman in my space, and my husband got fired from his job from the pot, and I was just so we lost our son, and we were in a financial distress. He lost his job. I was medically unable to do anything, and we were in a world of hurt, and I was just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that we're going through this. Is there anything else that's going to happen here? Where a lot of people are going at now. I've already lived and came out the other side, so I understand, again, more compassion, right? But what I did differently is I watched him. I said, this is your mess. You made it, and you're the one that has to get out yourself. I'm not going to do it this time. You need to do this. I'm just going to watch you do it. And he was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's doing this. But what that did, that was one of the best things a wife could do for her husband, because before I was just emasculating him. I wasn't seeing that he was capable. I was just stepping on him, smashing him, shaming him, you bad boy, But as soon as I moved out and I said, you need to take care of this. You're the one that did this. You fix it. And I may divorce you too at this point in time. I don't know. It just depends on what this looks like. It depends on how and what you do. Are you going to walk your talk and clean yourself up or not? And so as soon as you can feel the difference, I'm back in my body, I'm sustained, I'm centered, I'm confident. I know the universe has got my back. I have all that going energetically. I know that the universe will give me the people to help me, support me while I'm moving through this. And the universe did. And then, he got counseling, and we did a personal training together way back when, and, he really cleaned up his stuff, and he doesn't smoke pot anymore. So, it's about really understanding this energetic insert, I'll call it, what we put in ourselves in these codependent relationships, and we cause us more pain and suffering because we're thinking we're being protective to the family, when in fact we're making a bigger mess than all of it together.
Yes, and by making him responsible for his own actions and basically leaving the ball in his court to man up, it really brought home to him what he really needed to do. Whereas in the past, whatever encouragement, whatever discouragement that was being manifested from you, whatever complaints or whatever the case may be, may have triggered a passive-aggressive response in him, where fragile male ego being what it is, and I know what that's all about, his response may have been, rather than listening to the real message, i.e. straighten it up and, quit being a pothead, instead all these defenses and barriers and everything pops up to sustain the ego. And then we're back to square one again, because he doesn't want to admit that he's got all these hang-ups, rather than being told, okay, it's your problem, I want you to deal with it. That in itself is very empowering. And so by giving him the room and the opportunity to grow and to change, you really help them through a rough spot. And so it shows yet again that there's ways to break through these barriers without brute headlong force, like just lowering one's head and trying to bull their way through a situation. Kind of shift the energy, shift the responsibility, and allow the other person to change and to grow. So that's a wonderful story, Naome.
Yeah, let's just change your terminology a minute. Instead of making him, what I did is I gave him an opportunity and said, you've got your choices. You can stay here and do this. And it's not an ultimatum, it's a boundary. And that's where a lot of people will use this. The people that are in addictions, I've seen this, oh, you're using an ultimatum. It's not an ultimatum. It's unsafe where you're at. You just got fired, and now it's turned into a boundary. And so now you get to create what you want to create. Do you want to continue down this road? And if you do, that's okay. There's no judgment. If that's what your path is, that's okay. But I'm not going to walk with you anymore if you choose that. And that's okay if you do, but I'm not going there. So I'm setting a boundary for myself. And I think that is, again, is the reality that we've all got to step in to say no more to this type of behavior. We are not going to put up with it. And on an energetic level, what it feels like with me, I know when I was, trying to, control and protect and be energetically insert in the way, I felt like the image I get, this hasn't happened to me, but it just has felt that way, is being on a horse and you're dragged around it, tied to the rope, and the horse is going, 60 miles an hour. And you're so out of control trying to control everything, and you're bruised and you're banged up and you're confused, and that's what it feels like. I mean, talk about a feed.
Oh, yes.
I mean, that's a big, big feed. And so that's what I see a lot when I do readings with people, is they're in this energetic responsible insert, and it's not a good place. It's a big Archon program.
Well, with that, we'll end it right here, and we definitely want to have you back on the Cosmic Switchboard Show, Naome. Naome Swan's website is embodyenergetikecstasy.com, and I encourage you, the listeners, if any of you are going through any kind of challenges of an archontic, hyperdimensional, emotional relationship nature, to get a hold of Naome, because she is the real deal, and I see her as one of the true stars in our field, someone who's coming from a heart-centered space and who, by word and deed, has proven that she is here to raise the vibe of this entire planet and to help all of us going through these challenges. And so with that, we'll meet again, Naome. We'll have another show very soon, and you've been listening to the Cosmic Switchboard Show. And once again, this is James Bartley, and wishing all of the listeners a very lovely time wherever you may be. Good night, everybody.
Good night, and thank you, James.
Thank you, Naome.